Uh, we need to have the short form buyer's rep agreement, which is document 15 TXR 1507. Basically, to show a house, we only need down to line 5 filled out. If you want to use it as a full service listing agreement, you can. You just have to fill out the rest of the document and check full service instead of showing. So basically, you need buyer's information, broker's information. In here, you have to put the property address.
Are you still sharing your screen? Oh, okay, there it is. Just making sure it was being shared. Okay, go ahead.
So property address, county and or contiguous counties. You could put, Austin, San Antonio, Houston. You can put multiple cities. You could put multiple counties. If they're looking up the 35 corridor, you could go from Dallas all the way to San Antonio. I got a couple people waiting to get in. Hang on. Move this over here where I can see it. Okay. And then you put the terms. I put 6 months to a year on everything I do, guys. So, we can always do a termination and let them out of it. But again, this is just authorizing us to be able to show house. This is basically just to be compliant to show a property. Go down to 5, you're going to check showing service. And Robert Slack does not allow us to charge, so 0 will always be in the broker fee for showing service. We cannot charge for that. And if you want to change this up and make it into a full service, then you're going to check full service. You'll go down here and put the 3% in the purchases, or if you're doing a lease, you can do a lease as well. Intermediary does or does not, and then broker's associate, which is you, buyer's information, and we both sign. That's all you need to show a house. Now I've added this document, which I had an attorney draft for me. The new NAR guidelines, if somebody does not want to pay a buyer's agent commission, we have to have something in writing. Now, does this mean we don't show them everything? We have to send them everything in a search, but we can't, if they want to see something that doesn't pay a buyer's agent, we can show it to them. We have to show it to them if they ask us, but this is saying they don't want to pay, so we can pick and choose which one we go to. We just have to call the agent and find out, if they're paying a buyer's agent commission. Get the buyers to sign this. All we need is something in writing. It can be an email or it can be this. I prefer to have a document that goes with the short form while you're getting them to sign something. That way you're one and done. Go ahead, Shoshana.
Yes, 2 things. One, are you able to send that the disclosure to us?
Yes, I'm going to send the packets to everybody when we're done with this.
Okay, and then
I left everything I added to this blank, so I didn't make any notes on these. I've got 3 disclosures that I got approved through Lauren, so we can use them going forward. And I'll go through each of them as we go through them. It's just a layer of the onion is what I look at it to protect us.
Perfect. And if we already have a client, can we present this disclosure to them as well?
So if they're okay with paying a buyer's agent, you don't need this. But if they don't want to pay a buyer's agent, I would get something signed by them.
Okay, because verbally they said they didn't mind. They understood that they would have to pay a difference if there was, but I wasn't sure if I should still get, remind them, and if not, to have them sign that.
Right. Now, remember, it's going to be a different market. It's going to be a wild, wild west, everybody. So if somebody doesn't want to pay a buyer's agent and they're not paying a buyer's agent commission, but the agent says, well, we'll negotiate, just remember, you're going to have to negotiate. So that there's possibility of them paying, but you've got to get, there's several documents we'll go over. I'm going through everything in order of how it's going to be on a contract because I
Mhm.
set it up in order so you could set your templates up. I want to make everybody's life easier to be compliant because what I found for me was once I got the documents in order, it all makes sense and it's a lot easier on us.
Okay, and then last question for a
Yeah.
short-term form. Does that have to be filled out for every single property, correct? So every property that you do, because it says
If
just property address?
not necessarily. If you
Okay.
show, if you're showing one-off buyers and you're showing single
Yeah.
properties, yes. But if
Okay,
you're showing a buyer that agreed to go with you on every property and you've got Hayes County and contiguous counties, basically you just need one for every. Now, if you go outside of those counties, you'll need a different one.
different one. Okay,
So you can layer it up to where you're doing multiple areas that only need one form for showings.
okay,
It just
perfect.
has to be uploaded in Broker Mint so that we have it
Okay,
on
Perfect.
file, or the broker has it on file. Oh,
Todd, I have-
last form, go ahead.
Sorry, Todd, I have a quick question. So on this example, you're doing it as a showing service. Are you advising, recommending that that's how we do it versus the full service and go through the percentages?
Well,
Or is it just for example
what I'm
purpose?
going to explain, what's going to be easier for me is to get this. Hey, I need this to show this property. So if I can't unlock this door until you sign this document. So most people, 99.9% of people are not going to know who they want to represent them in a transaction up front. They're going to think about it. So my philosophy, Misty's philosophy, has always been the first one's free. And so I want to get something signed and get them. Once I feel like if we get the showing service signed, most people are going to be somewhat loyal. Doesn't mean they're always going to be loyal. You're going to have to stay in front of them. Is it best practice to get the long form or the full service? Yes. So if you can get them to agree to do the full service, go ahead and do the full service. But my goal exercising today is to teach us to be compliant.
Got it. Yeah, so I get that. So this is the one just to, it's an,
Now, this is just to get us in the door. Now, as you're showing houses and you've got this signed, what I'm doing when you write an offer is you're going to go to you'll shift to the long form when you write an offer. Or if you can get it before, it's always best practice, but you want to make sure you get the long form done between this document and when you're writing an offer. Because if the short form, even if you have full service on it, I'd still transfer to the long form when you write an offer.
would you still do the disclosure if you're simply doing a showing service? Or
I would basically, yes, because if they don't want to pay a buyer's agent, I mean, you don't have to, but I mean, while you're getting the form, you're going to find out whether they want to pay a buyer's agent or not. If they're not willing to pay a buyer's agent, then you want to be a little bit more cognizant of what you're showing them to save your time.
okay, thank you.
I mean, the best bet to do is, hey, Mr. Listing Agent, is your client willing to pay a buyer? And that's what I would do when you're scheduling a home. I would follow up on that if your client signed this, because if they say no, move on to the next house. If they say they're negotiable, and I'd ask that question, if they say no, well, are you negotiable for the right offer? It's going to incentivize us to bring them a better offer.
Yeah.
So anyway, any other questions on this? The last document you need to have with it, and they have not been practicing it. It seems like this has gone under the rug, is to make sure we get the information of broker services about brokered services signed. Because if we don't have this, we're supposed to have this signed with the first substantial conversation. So if you're showing a house for the first time, this is your first substantial conversation.
So let me extend a little bit more on what Todd said. So if it's negotiable and the bottom line, you bring a good offer, they're probably going to cover it. So if you've got clientele that are a little on the cheaper side on their bids, it's worth letting them know that in all likelihood, for negotiable, what it means is they're not going to take and pick up the full commission. Okay, so just giving them that common sense little nugget so they're prepared for that. So anyway, just
And
Just
any
the way
other
it's gonna work.
questions on this form? All right, I think we got this covered. And I'm open for, if anybody wants to text me, call me, that's fine. Texting is the best approach to get a hold of me, and then I can call you back if you have a longer question. Up here
So
on the
maybe-
top, when I send these out, they're gonna have red up here in the top corner on the newer forms. I just want to make sure everybody kind of knows when their uses are, so I have everything noted. All documents today have kind of been auto-populated with kind of what goes into the boxes. So there's a few things I'm going to go over that will help us in the rest of the contract as well. So let's move on to the writing and offer.
Stop 1 second. So when we get these things signed, are we chartered to keep them? Are we chartered to get them into brokerment?
They need to go into brokerment. So if you're using a transaction coordinator, send it to your transaction coordinator and have them upload it. If you're doing it yourself, then you need to get it into brokerment with your client, because if you've got something on your follow-up boss that is showing homes, you better have something shown uploaded in brokerment, because that's where we need to be compliant.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, on to the writing an offer. Between showing houses and writing an offer, you're gonna need to send the 24 TXR 2402. This is what goes out to the other agent before you submit an offer. And I would highly recommend it if you've got somebody that's, interested in multiple properties. You may have to send this out when you're showing homes, guys, because time is of the essence. You want to make sure that number one, our commission is protected, and number two, that you get this out into ample time, because some agents don't respond as fast as others. It's a proven fact.
If an agent has a website or something like that that states what the commission is, do we still need to do this form if they've got it in public?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If they have money in their listing agreement for paying a commission, you need to have this filled out. This is a required document to get paid. And I'll go over when you don't need this. There's only very few reasons you won't need this. There's 2 reasons. And so basically you're going to put the listing agent's information, buyers listing agent broker information, buyer's agent broker information, address of the property. You're registering your buyer. So this is where the buyer's name goes in. And then your term. 6 months to a year is what I put on everything. 3%, if that's what they say that they're willing to pay. If they say they're only paying 2%, then you put that in there. Or you can try to negotiate more and see if you can get them to sign this at the higher commission. But the most important thing is to get this signed by the other agent. And then basically fill out the listing agent's information. Listing agent will sign, buyer's agent broker information, buyer agent, and the buyer agent sign. So any questions on that document? This is the document you send out to the other agent between showing a home before you write an offer. That's when this document goes out. This document here goes if there's no other agent involved, it's a for sale by owner. It's an off-market property. Or if the seller, if they have 5B checked on the listing agreement, they don't have money in the bucket for, you're gonna send this out to the agent to have the owner sign it before, to have them agree to pay a commission. So there's 3 reasons why you would have this document signed. Number 1, it's a for sale by owner. Number 2, it's an off the market property. And number 3, if the listing agreement does not pay a buyer's agent, then you're going to send this out and see if they will pay, if the owner will pay, because the listing agent doesn't have money in her bucket. And again, you're going to have the owner's information, broker's information, property address, legal description of the property, sales price that y'all agreed to, that you're bringing to them, and then the term, 3%. And then these are all for leases. Broker's representation will represent prospect only. Now you could do an intermediary between owner and prospect, meaning you're representing both parties, which highly don't recommend, but you can. Will represent the owner only. So there's some representation in here as well. So another good use for this form would be if they want a pocket listing or they don't want to be on the MLS, and you can bring them a buyer, you can do it with this form.
Okay. If you get 2402 with 3%, you're probably not going to do a 2401.
You don't need it.
Yeah.
Because that means the listing agent has money in their bucket.
Correct.
They don't
Okay.
have money in the bucket on the listing agreement, then you're going to shift to this form.
Perfect.
Todd,
Yeah.
a quick question on the asking price that you're putting in there on A. So if this is theoretically, this is going out before the offer, correct? This is your,
That is correct. So basically, if you don't know what you're going to put, I would just put what they're, the ask price on the contract to see if they'll pay a commission, or if it's generally going to be an off the market property or for sale by owner. So you're basically putting what they're asking in there.
okay.
Now, at the end of the day, there's another form once you get a contract that is the last layer to the onion and sews everything up. So we'll go over that in a minute. Basically, in here, you're going to put the additional documents that the broker requires for services. Again, Robert Slack requires wire fraud, the freedom funding document, and the IABS form. So basically disclosing that we have a relationship with freedom funding. And we'll go over those documents in a minute. And then lastly, fill out the information as you would on all the documents and move on down the road. Any questions on that document? All right, we'll move on to the contract. So the 1 to 4 contract, you're going to put the seller's name, buyer's name, legal description. Again, this is always the most important part of the document, because the legal description actually tells you what you're buying. So make sure you verify. If you've got 3 lots on the ground and they only have 1 lot in the legal description on the MLS, you want to make sure you have all the legal description on the property, which is always the most important part of this contract, because it tells what the buyer is buying. Exclusions: if anybody wants to remove something from the contract, if a seller wants to take the water softener, anything up here in B and C, these are all the things that are tied to fixed to the house or accessories to the sale. So if the seller's excluding something, this is where it's gonna go. Sales price, you're gonna put the cash portion here, financing portion and B. Check the third-party financing, and then my stuff auto-populates the sales price here. So basically these two lines should add up to your sales price. If you're dealing with a house that's got a lease, you're going to deal with these documents. These are one-off documents. If anybody needs help with these, I will be more than happy to go over the addendums for lease. If you check these boxes because there's a lease or a fixture lease, now fixture lease is like a propane tank or solar panels or water softener. You're going to check this, and then it tells you what addendum to put in there, and I can help you with those forms as you need them. Natural sources as resources as well. Page 2, earnest money. This is where you're going to put the title company and escrow agent. I know it says escrow agent here. I always just err to have title company and escrow agent's name. Address to the title company. 1% of sales price is typically the amount that goes in here for earnest money. And then $100 for 10 days. Now, depending on your market, sometimes, like if you're in Austin, you might have $400 for 10 days. So it just depends on your market. San Antonio market, you're pretty safe at $10 a day. But you know, if you don't have any offers on the table, you can put the lower amount and let it ride and see what happens. If you need to make your offer more enticing, you can just add more money there. These lines right here are for additional earnest money. So if you've got a client that can only afford half the 1%, then you could put the other half in here and then in 14 days. Now, this doesn't make your offer very enticing, but it's a way to write it to where they can deliver additional earnest money, you know, a week, 2 weeks when they get a paycheck or something. Termination of option. This is your option period. This is what they're paying for up here in this line. Option period. I typically put, you know, to be enticing, I've gone down to 3 days, 5 days, 7 days, 10 days. So it just depends on how this option period is very popular to make your offer more powerful. The shorter the option period, the more powerful your offer comes. So I mean, I've had people waive the option period because they were comfortable moving forward. Oh, the option fee is there. It's due within within 3 days by 5 p.m. is when, by the time this is executed, it's due within 3 days. Paragraph 6, title policy. Typically, it's to the seller's expense, and then you put the title company. If you want to make your offer more enticing, you could put it to the buyer. At the end of the day, I've got this template set up for what I do, for what's in the best interest of my buyer to make their offer decent. So this is just kind of a standalone FHA offer. And, you know, if anybody needs help with something different, I'm more than happy to help. Areas and shortages. This and II is the one I typically, to protect my buyer, I always want to have areas and shortage insurance at the seller's expense, because this makes it's a layer of protection for any shortages or errors on the survey. So if you get a survey that's got an error on it, the shortages and area title policy will cover it. It's a very inexpensive title policy. So if you want to put it to the buyer's expense to make your offer more enticing, that's a good avenue to go to make your offer look a little more enticing. If you have a brand new survey, that's the only time you won't need the areas and shortages. But I would always err to having the errors and shortages in your offer initially. But if you need to make it more enticing, you can remove it, or you could have it at the buyer's expense. Page 3, survey. Typically, you're gonna see box 1 checked, 7 days, and they have to provide the T47 in the survey within 7 days. And if they don't provide it within the 7 days, then a new survey will be provided at seller's expense. So even if you check it as a buyer's expense and they don't deliver these documents, it still becomes a seller's expense. So as a buyer's agent or as a listing agent, there's some teeth here that you got to pay attention to the verbiage, or you might be buying a survey, which I've had a couple of agents that have had to pay for a survey in the past for their client because they did the wrong thing. So the other 2 boxes, or if you want the buyer's going to pay for it, and box 3 is if the seller's going to pay for it and provide a new survey. Objection period. This is the most misunderstood section of the contract. I've done a lot of research on this section in the last 2 weeks. I've actually learned a lot of new things. So I was doing things incorrectly for a little while, but now I have a little bit better grasp on this. When you're writing an offer, if you know your client's wanting to put an in-ground pool in the backyard, they want to run a business out of the home, they want to do short-term rentals, long-term rentals, build a second home, put in a portable building. If anything's restricted from this, when they receive the title commitment, the survey, and the HOA docs, they've got 10 days to object to anything that they can't do or have an issue with. Then the buyer can, if they don't cure the objection in 15 days, then the buyer can terminate the contract and get out of the contract. So this adds a layer of out. So say you write an offer and there's an easement in the backyard. You got an in-ground pool in there. If they can't put an in-ground pool because of that easement, then they can get out of the contract. So it's definitely a good use of this. I've seen anywhere from 5 to 10 days in this line. So, use this section for what you need. But what I would always do when you're writing the offer, ask your client, what are the future, you're going to live here for 30 years. If just say this is their forever home, they're going to live there the rest of their life. What do you want to do with this property? And then put all that in that line. That way you add a layer of protection for them in the offer. And if anybody has questions on that, I've recently learned a lot about that section. There are actually YouTube videos out there from attorneys that I watched that I got a lot of that information from. So there's stuff out there on that section. Membership of an HO in a homeowners association. And this one, I just checked the box is, so we could go over the HOA documents. All this is just verbiage from the contract. That's standard verbiage. If you got any questions on any of the other paragraphs we're not filling out, let me know. I can answer a lot of the questions. Required notices. If it applies, if there's a MUD, WCID, a PID, you need to attach to the contract the appropriate documents and note it in here. Property conditions. If the buyer has received the seller's disclosures, you're going to check box 1. If they have not, you're going to check box 2 and put within 7. I put 3 to 10 days. So in here, I put 7 at the end of the day. It's just a layer of protection. If for some reason they don't, once you receive the seller's disclosures, if you did not receive them and the box 1 is checked, this is another out for your clients because you've got 7 days after you receive that the buyer can terminate because they don't like something on the seller's disclosures. So I've used that section before as my option period to make my offer more enticing. Lead-based paint is required if the house is before 1978. If the seller has never lived in the house, they're not required to provide seller's disclosures per the Texas Property Code. Now, does that mean if box 2 is checked, every contract I write, I either put box 1 or box 2. I do not put box 3. I had a client one time that I had checked box 2, and we had 7 days in here, and it was an investor that accepted the contract and executed it, never provided the seller's disclosures. We had issues all the way up to the closing date. Because the seller's disclosures were never provided, my buyer was able to get out of the contract because we had issues, and it was just an added layer of protection. Page 5, 1 and 2. Because you check buyer accepts the property as is does not mean you're buying the property as is. So if you've got a buyer that is check-in and they're concerned about, well, I want some things done. Well, that's what your option period's for. We're going to negotiate that in the option period. If they want things done, you can write it in here. I gave an example of professional cleaning, including carpets and appliances. So at the end of the day, we're buying it as is, but we still have our option period and we have another negotiation. I'd rather negotiate everything in the option period than negotiate here. But if you can get it in here, great. Like if it needs a new roof, put in a new roof. And then if they accept it, then that's one less thing you have to negotiate in the option period. So useful section. Residential service contract. Typically, I put $500 to $600. The reason why I don't put anything less than $500 is that under $500 does not cover appliances. So if you've got a buyer that's wanting a home warranty for the first year, I always err to the 600 side. Now, at the end of the day, say the seller's only willing to pay $400. Great, I'll give you the extra $100 as a closing gift out of my commission. You're done with your closing gift and you've got a happy buyer. So those are good examples of what to do in that section. In that I've never had to do that, but at the end of the day, I always try to get $600 just to get them the level of coverage that they need. Now, if they have a pool, if there's a pool or things like that, then the coverage is higher. So just make sure it covers everything they're buying. Brokers and sales agent, paragraph 8. This is where if the buyer is a licensed agent, you want to just note that. If the seller's a licensed agent, you want to note that. If you're related to your brother, sister, mother and you're their agent, you have to disclose that. Yeah, we all learned that in real estate class. Closing date, I typically do 30 days to 45 days. Now, that's a question you're going to ask your lender. If you're comfortable with your lender, you know what they can do, then do it. But other than that, I would recommend always go to your lender and ask, hey, how long can you get this done? Could be 21 days. So I've seen them, some lenders can move faster than others. If you're dealing with a bank directly, you always want to make sure you communicate with them because they're the slowest on the planet. I've got a deal right now that's costed me 30 days just because it's a small town bank that's super slow. Paragraph 10, possession. We're going to check this one upon closing and funding. If somebody needs a lease back, that's the other box. I can go over that document on a later date. It's just a 2-page document, easy peasy, straightforward document. So if it's pretty self-explanatory, but if you need help with it, let me know. I can help you with it. Special provisions, we do not practice law. Now, we can add informational stuff in there. I've talked to an attorney and asked him what's informational, and he said, well, really nothing's informational, but you know, if you need a special provisions addendum drafted, call me. I've got a title company that drafts them for me, and I can get them fairly quickly. So they just text them to me, and easy peasy. So if you have something that needs to be added, I write in here and put C attached special provisions addendum. That's information. Settlement and other expensive. If you're asking for closing costs, this is where you're going to put your amount. Notices on page 8. I put the buyer's name up here. I don't put their address. I don't put their phone number. I put buyer's name and email only. I do not want my buyer and seller communicating directly with each other. I just have a deal right now that fortunately it saved the deal that the buyer and seller communicated with each other. But at the end of the day, I don't recommend having the buyer and seller communicating with anything other than email. Agreements to the party. You're going to check your third-party financing because that's what is going to be attached to this contract because it's financing. Addendum for HOA, Property Owners Association, is part of this offer that I wrote. Any other documents that you add to it, you will check. The most important document you're going to put in this other section, and I put this in red stars around it, is your TXR 2406. Now you're going to put your non-realty addendum and your TXR 2406 addendum in here because the 2406 addendum has the buyer and seller signing, agreeing to your commission. Again, this is the most important section. I had a deal that I just got from a Dallas house that I got on got under contract, one of my listings, and the agent sent me all the appropriate documents, but she did not put TXR 2406 in others. So it's not technically not a party to the contract because she sent it to me in a separate email. Again, I'm not going to fight her over it. I'm just going to move on down the road. But a slime ball agent or a bad agent, they may go after your commission on that, guys. So it's very critical that we put the appropriate things in the new rules are going to make us have a lot more detail that we have to follow.
Todd, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
That just made me think of something. Do we need to make any changes to current executed contracts and add any of that?
Not executed contracts because they're executed before the date.
Okay, thanks.
Now, if you have a buyer's rep agreement with the old form out and you have there is a amendment to the buyer's rep agreement that I would recommend that you at least get that done so you amend to the new form. And I'll go over that last. So it's my last document that I've got on a standalone.
Thanks.
And there's another reason why you need that document. So I'll explain that in a minute.
Hey, Todd, quick question before you start going.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hey, do I send this 2406 with the contract, or when do we do the 2406?
I've got that attached at the bottom. I'll go over that when we get, but yes, it needs to be attached to the contract.
Okay.
So when you put your form together, you're going to put a template together. I see a lot of agents send me documents. They send the contract, the third-party financing, and they're all individual PDFs. I would not do that, guys. I would put it all in one template, send it all as one document. That way everything is attached. So when you're sending things out, everything goes out as one PDF.
Okay.
Because
So when they accept the contract and sign it, they'll sign this that's in the back?
Yeah, it's got signature blocks at the bottom, and I'll show you that in a minute.
Yeah,
That
yeah, I see
form's
it.
coming.
Okay, this is the first I heard the 2406, so I was trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's probably the most critical document we're gonna need in our new world. paragraph 23, and I put advised here. You don't have to fill this out but there's a disclosure form that I'm advising them, and you'll see in a minute that I'm advising them that I cannot give legal advice. I'm not an attorney. So again, in the Trek form, that it says that they're signing, but they don't ever read these documents. They don't ever see these documents until they need to see these documents, and that's when they talk to an attorney. So, then you're going to have your clients sign this, and then you'll submit it to the seller once you have all documents signed. And then this is where you execute the contract. The last client that signs, this is the effective date of the contract. The information, broker's information goes in here. I kind of template it. The listing agent goes in here. This is just informational. Used to be, this is what was advertised in the MLS. Now this is not advertised in the MLS. If you talk to an agent, they say they pay 3%, then you can put that there. And now it's a worthless line. This is where the title company is going to receipt all money and receipt the contract once they receive all money. Any questions on the 1 to 4? All right, moving on to the third-party financing addendum. This one is set up for an FHA loan because it's got more numbers that we have to remember. That's why I did this. Property address. You're going to come down here and check the box C, FHA insured financing. 203B is the number for an FHA loan. That is the product type. Section 203B. There is a 203K, which is a property improvement loan, which you'll never use. That's a hard loan to get. Most lenders don't like to use it, but it is a product that's out there. Financing amount from line B in the 1 to 4 is what goes in here. This is what the interest rate is. Say your lender says they're qualified for 6.75. In the event interest rates go up to 7.25, the client in the 21 days of their finance period, your buyer can get out of the contract because they can't qualify for the loan for 6.75 anymore. For 30 years, not to exceed 1% is the standard the origination charge. Now, each lender is different. Again, this document is between the lender and the buyer. So I rarely have other agents ask me to change this, but I've seen it. But again, if your buyer asks, hey, well, I don't know if I can put, on a conventional loan, I put 20% down when it's just a 5%. I do it just to make my offer more enticing. So I can teach you some tricks if you ever get into things you need to write a stronger offer. Page 2, line A, this is the section where you get an out for your client. Typically, I check this box with 21 days. You can make it 14 days. I would strongly suggest to get with the lender and find out how long they need to get a reassurance on their approval. Just because they have a pre-qual letter doesn't mean they're pre-approved. That means they're conditionally approved. So there's big difference between the two. Now, if your client has already been run through underwriting and they can take the offer and run and go to underwriting and get that they're already approved, check the next box. It makes your offer a lot stronger. If it's an FHA or a VA loan, you're going to put the sales price in here because that's what it has to appraise for, the sales price. And that's a layer of protection. And lastly, on third-party financing, you'll get the buyer and seller to sign. Any questions on the third-party financing addendum? All right, moving on to the mandatory HOA document. Property address, HOA name, paragraph A. I always check box 1. I put 14 days because typically that's what the title company needs to get HOA docs. If they get it faster, great, but generally I put 14 days because that's the time frame. I used to put 7, and then I found out title companies need at least 14 days on a standard title company. The other boxes, buyer shall obtain and pay for. Buyer has received the subdivision information. Buyer does not or does not require. I would never check these because, again, we want to protect our client. Buyer does not require delivery of subdivision information. I would not recommend going into those boxes. Box A is the best box to go with to protect your buyer. Again, I'm teaching y'all to write a solid offer for your buyer. If you need to write a stronger offer to get it accepted, and there's some things we can be flexible on, I can help you with that. Fees and deposits for reservation. Standard is $100 to $150 is what a seller is typically paying in this section. You could put $0. You could put more. It just makes your offer a little more enticing because the seller's contributing a little bit. And then I always put this box to the seller's expense. We'll pay. And then lastly, they sign. Any questions on the HOA docs? Non-realty addendum. This is just an example, $0. You could pay for furniture. You could pay for, amount for anything. I basically $0. Refrigerator, washer and dryer, portable building. These are examples of what can go in here. Now, if your clients are expecting some of the accessories, fixtures, I might suggest that you put it in here anyway, just because even though it's in the contract, I've seen curtains disappear, and that's an accessory. I've seen water softeners disappear. I've even seen the oven disappear. So at the end of the day, I would recommend putting things in here that if your clients show up on closing day and they're going to be totally upset because they said, oh, I love these curtains, I would put the curtains in here just to protect your buyer. Even though they're supposed to be an accessory to the sale, I would just err to the side of things happen. Then that's it for the non-realty addendum. Okay, this is the most important document. This is required with the offer. This is where we get paid. Basically, cash fees, you're going to put the county the home is being purchased in. If you have the compensation agreement between brokers signed by the agent saying they're paying you a commission, you're going to check box 1. That's the 2402. And you're going to put 3% in here or whatever y'all agreed to in that 2402. If the seller is paying the commission because the agent doesn't have it, then you're going to have the TXR 2401 sent to the seller, and well, it's going to go to the agent and then the seller, or if it's an off the market property, it just goes to the seller. Compensation agreement between broker and owner is the document, and you're going to have the amount that y'all agreed to in here. In the event you do not have any agreement, this is where you put the 3%. And you're negotiating your commission. So if they say seller's not paying, buyer's not paying, or the seller's not paying, the owner's not paying. When you write an offer, you're gonna put it into the no agreement line that I have highlighted. It is very critical that you put your money in the right bucket. And then lastly, you'll have the buyer and seller sign. This is what it makes it a contractual obligation for your commission. So if there's no document that's agreed and you put it in paragraph D2B and you don't have agreements on the 2402 or the 2401, then the seller, by signing this, agrees he's going to pay a commission. So that's where it's going to be very critical as buyer's agents to educate our buyers to write a stronger offer. Any questions on that document? That's the one that goes as I said, I put up here in the top right corner, I put in red kind of where these documents fall. And I'm going to send all this out to everybody because I want everybody to have a template of what they need to do. For the first couple of years of me writing offers, I had a packet with me everywhere I went, and it helped me tremendously to write offers because I'm visual.
Todd,
Yes.
I'm just going to repeat that to make sure I fully understand, because I think that was really important what you said about the 2B. So that's where, let's say, if you're having the conversation with the buyer, okay, we'll see if we can negotiate it. They're not agreeing to pay a commission for the buyer's agent. So we'll see if we can negotiate something in the contract. We write a really strong offer. That B is where that's in action of that negotiation, saying, okay, we wrote a full price offer. Let's see if we can negotiate, the 3% being covered here. And
Yep.
that's where you do 2B, correct?
That's it.
Okay.
So basically, paragraph 1, if you have a 2402 agreed to already, which you typically should before you when you show the house or before you write an offer, if you have a TXR 2401 signed, you're going to have that done before you show or up to writing an offer. Those mechanisms take care of the first 2 buckets. The third bucket is when you don't have any agreement and you're having to go to battle to work for your commission, literally. Because if they don't sign this document and it's now, if you attach this form and you don't have it up in the others box on paragraph 22, then it's not a party to the contract and they don't have to sign it, and then you're SOL. So
Yeah.
we need to make sure we pay attention. The devil's in the details, guys.
Yeah, and I can see we're on the flip side, on the listing side, making sure that's, and I know you'll get to that later, but that's
Yeah.
really important to make sure you read what bucket it's in.
And for the people that aren't on my team, I put my name and my phone number up in the chat box. So if y'all need anything, feel free to text me, call me, email me, whatever y'all need. I am here. Text is the best form of the quickest response for me. And if I don't know the answer, I've got 3 attorneys that I have on speed dial that I get every answer to. And that's where I learned all this stuff is I went to a class. I went over all the new forms. They went over every document in the class. And at the end of the day, I was so confused just by all the questions and answers.
Yeah.
Now, when we have any other questions on that document?
Yeah, it's not so much a question on the document, it's more procedurally. So when you have a listing agent and he says that commission is negotiable, okay, they're waiting to hear what price you're offering.
Right.
So somehow you've got to communicate your price for them to tell you what commission they're covering.
Well, that's where you're going to kind of have to build that relationship with the other agent. I can tell you there's going to be some slime ball agents out there. There's going to be some bad agents that don't communicate. There's gonna be all kinds of things. So that's where these three buckets are gonna come in handy, because number one, you want to try to always get that compensation agreement between brokers agreed to before you
Yeah.
write the offer. Now, you can tell them what offer you're bringing.
Yeah, I don't think you got much of a choice.
Yeah, well, the other caveat to a listing agent, they may not be able to disclose. There is a new disclosure form that goes with the listing agreement, which we'll learn in the next class. So, but there's definitely it is going to be the wild, wild west. Again, best advice I can tell you guys is be nice, play nice, and negotiate. That's going to be the hardest thing for me, is to play nice.
One, one other question that just made me think of. So you're checking this 2B, let's say in this instance, if you don't have the 2402 or the 2401. If you have this then signed with the 2B, do you then need to gain the 2402
No,
to supplement, or this covers that?
this covers
Now
it.
you've
This,
got that
this
agreement.
becomes a contractual obligation. Now, what I will tell everybody is what's probably going to change in November, from what I'm hearing, is this document will probably go away. What's going to happen is they're going to roll up a signature block like the farm and ranch and the commercial that has signature blocks above the last signature that makes it contractual. So it could get less complex, but at the end of the day, until we get everything lined out, this is the addendum we have to deal with. We just have to be very clear. Now, there is one other thing that makes this section a little bit more confusing. If you have a compensation agreement and if you have a 2402 signed, and then on the 2406, you go do 2B, that the seller will have to pay twice. Because there's two different agreements. The agent's paying you and the seller's paying you. So at the end of the day, just make sure you put the percentages in the right bucket. Guys, I just strongly suggest, let's always do the right thing. Because the right thing is what's going to get us to the closing table, and it's going to get us paid. Now, there's agents out there that aren't going to do the right thing. We just got to protect ourselves.
So theoretically, and I'm sorry, Todd, I'm not trying to
Yeah,
complicate
you're
this.
good.
It just as we're working through it, theoretically, you could have two boxes checked, correct? So couldn't you have where originally the listing agreement said, okay, we'll do two, and then in the negotiations, the seller's saying, you know what, we'll add one. Is that how that would play out, or would you need
Yeah,
to?
so if you had you know, they were paying 2% and you sent this off and you told the seller that you're asking the seller to pay 1% at the bottom and 2B, absolutely.
Okay. And that would cover it if that was the agreement, this form would cover all of that.
Yeah.
Wouldn't add anything. Okay.
Or you could have your buyer's rep agreement and have them pay the extra 1%.
The buyer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I mean, because you can always, this is opening up, you can always negotiate for more than what the listing agreement says.
yep. And you could, you know, if you put money in concessions for that and you put the sellers paying for it and y'all have everything agreed to, you're still going to put it in here and it'll come out of the concessions line. So
Okay.
there's also an option where you can have a special provisions addendum drafted and you don't need this document. Which
Does
I
it
don't.
have to be in the concession line as
So-
well?
So what if you put in the money in the concession bucket? I think to protect yourself, you're probably going to need a special provisions addendum at that point. So again, that's going to be a negotiation. So if you get to that point and you're putting money in concessions for your commission, I would strongly suggest that you call me and let's get a special provision attached to that before you execute the contract, because at the end of the day, that's where things are going to get hairy.
Okay. I was
Because
making
if,
sure.
if
Yeah, I was
there's
making sure I
nothing
understood.
noted, I mean, and then the other caveat to all this is our DA. We need to make sure we get our DA sent to title as quickly as possible before closing and make sure it's correct, because at the end of the day, if title doesn't have that, we're not getting paid.
Yeah. So there's nothing that tells them where the different funds are coming from. So timing seems like right after option for a preliminary DA, but makes sense.
Yeah. I would just err to get it out as quick as possible once you have an agreement. That's what that title, and then you can always have your transaction coordinator or amend the disbursement agreement. That's what a DA is for the newer agents. The broker's disbursement agreement that
Yeah.
goes with the title.
If you wait for just a few days before closing, you're gonna delay closing.
Yep. Yep. Because the lender may, if you have money in concessions and it's not noted on the DA that you're getting paid, or your buyer's paying. I saw the example I saw that was clear was the class I went to had a DA, the title company had a DA, had all the commit 3% in the buyer's agent commission. The contract said that they were paying 2.75%, but it didn't say in the DA that the buyer was paying the other 0.25% of the commission, and the agent did not get paid the 2.75 until they got the correct DA to them. So you definitely don't want to delay closing. So now we're going to move on to the buyer's rep agreement long form. I've attached this to the offer because this is generally what you're going to be up against. I got approval from Lauren. If long as we have the short form filled out with the showing service, we can do the long form with the offer while we're sending it out to the client, so we get it all done at one time. Ideally, we want it before, but if we get it when we write the offer, it's easier for signatures anyway. So buyers' names, Robert Schlack's information. At this point, you're writing an offer, so you can put the property address, or if you feel like it's not a strong offer, you could put Hayes and contiguous counties. So you can still show them, and then you've moved this over to a long form. And then 6 months to a year is what I do. You can do shorter. I just don't like to redo paperwork. Mine populates the name and Robert Schlack, so you'll put the buyer's names, Robert Schlack. My preference is I put in parentheses my name behind Robert Schlack as the agent, but you can, you don't have to do that. I've also, on our broker's fees, everybody's been asking where to put the $7.95 fee or our transaction fee. This is where I do it. I've gotten approval from Lauren for us to do this. To put our if we want to get the buyer to pay for our technology fee. Now, in my zip forms, what I have to do is I type in 3 and hit the space bar, the field turns green, and then I can type in it. So, yes, go ahead.
You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, sorry
Yeah.
about that. What if we didn't get a chance to put in that $7.95 fee? Could we edit it and have them re-sign that part?
I'll show you in a minute what to do in that instance.
Okay.
There's another form and there's an amendment. Once you get something executed, you have to do an amendment.
Okay.
But yes, you can add it later. And then protection period, I personally put 180 days, 6 months. Everybody says that's a long time, but if I've taken them through a house, I want as much protection as I can for me. But I've seen 90, I've seen 30 days. This is after the time this agreement ends. If I showed them this house, they owe me a commission up to 180 days. Am I going to get that? Probably not. It's just a number that I put in there. The county, again, we already know where on this one, the county that they're purchasing this house in this offer. I put that county. If you don't get this offer accepted, I've talked to several attorneys. They told me the county doesn't even really matter. They're not, that's not going to be binding to get paid. This is the line if there's a relocation company or if an employer is gonna pay something. Intermediary status. This means we get to show them our broker's properties or your own personal listings. And then if they don't want to see our properties and get into an intermediary status, then you check box B. I always do A. And then addenda, this is the documents that I would suggest you send to your buyer. Wire fraud is required by Robert Slack. Protection for home inspection. If you're dealing with a new buyer, I would definitely send them that document. You don't have to send that one. That's not required. General information and notices to buyer and seller. I would recommend you send that to a new buyer or somebody that, is not that experienced and they have questions. You don't have to send that one. The only one that's required in these check boxes is the wire fraud and the information on brokerage services. And then you have you sign here on broker associates, and then the buyer sign over here. Any questions on the long form? Now, in this instance, this is when I'm showing houses with a showing agreement. They decided to write an offer. I've attached the long form to the offer for simplicity reasons, and I'm staying in compliance. If you get the long form signed before, much better, less things they have to sign. So always recommend to try to get it before, but if all they want to do is have a showing service agreement and then go into an offer and a contract and sign it, then you're staying in compliance. So right now, I'm just teaching you how to stay in compliance. This is a document I had prepared by an attorney. And for the ones in Dallas that are on here, it's Independence Title in Colleyville. Great title company. I use them on probably 75% of my transactions and do everything remotely. They send out a mobile notary. We always want to try to use our Robert Slack title company. What's the name of the title company, Misty? With Robert Slack? Well, anyway, moving forward, this basically says to consult an attorney before signing. TREC rules prohibit real estate brokers and sales agents from giving legal advice. So kind of a scary statement for a buyer or a seller. I attach this with all forms, but in the end, I just tell them, according to my license, I'm not allowed to give legal advice because I'm not an attorney. That's all this is saying. And that's how I broach it. And it's easy peasy. Date it, sign it, put the property address that you're attaching this to. If you're doing a listing, you can put the listing address. If you're writing an offer for them, you can put the property address there. Wire fraud, this is the one that is required. There's nothing to fill out. It's just signature blocks. Robert Slack requires it. This is the Robert Slack affiliate with Freedom Funding. Freedom Title is the title company. Basically, we have an affiliate with them, so therefore we have to disclose this. This does not mean your client has to use them. It just discloses that we have an affiliate with a lender and a title company. And lastly is the information on brokerage services, and that's the entire packet that to keep you in compliance. Any questions? All right. I guess we don't have any questions. Well, I will send, get this out. I know Lauren is going to be sending this document out. I have my transaction coordinator checking into where to upload this, either in Brokerman or somewhere. I'm gonna get with Angel to find out where she wants to put this for all eyes to see, because I would highly recommend it. Once you get a copy of it, print it out, put it in your car, put it where you're going to be. So I've written 100 documents on a counter. I will tell you the best tool that I have is my iPad with my Apple Pencil. I can pre-fill out most of the lines, and then it'll allow me to type in the others, and then I can get signatures with my Apple Pencil, or I can fill out the missing blanks with my Apple Pencil. So at the end of the day, it's a lot simpler for me. I used to print out all these forms, take all these forms with me. Now I just have everything on my iPad. So that's what works for me. You just got to figure out what works for y'all's business. So any suggestions or any questions, I'm here to help with. So if nobody has any other questions, we'll head off to take a break and then see y'all back here at 10 o'clock Central Time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Todd.
See y'all in a little bit.
Great, thank you.
Hey, Todd, what's the 10 o'clock thing?
The 10 o'clock is the list